Welcome back to Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires. Weather is no longer natural. The military has weaponized the skies, cloud seeding, aerosol spraying, and electromagnetic warfare shaping our climate. They call it climate change. We call it engineered destruction. Stay tuned, the truth is coming. Chapter 2, the military's secret role in atmospheric weaponry. Publishing Zombie is proud to bring you the book Inferno Unleashed. If you're interested in reading more about Inferno Unleashed, get your copy now, available in Amazon bookstores. For decades, the idea that governments and military organizations could manipulate the weather seemed like the stuff of science fiction. However, as declassified documents, whistleblower testimonies, and independent investigations have revealed, weather modification is not only real, it has been weaponized. Welcome to this explosive episode where we expose one of the greatest hidden operations of modern warfare, the military's secret role in atmospheric weaponry. From the jungles of Vietnam to the wildfires of California, the fingerprints of geoengineering are undeniable. The military-industrial complex has long sought to control nature itself, not for environmental protection, but as a tool of economic warfare, psychological manipulation, and political dominance. The ability to prolong monsoons, intensify droughts, steer hurricanes, and accelerate wildfires provides governments and elite institutions with a terrifying level of power. Yet, this reality remains hidden behind mainstream narratives that blame climate change, natural disasters, and human activities, while the real perpetrators operate in the shadows. Our investigation begins with a historical look at Operation Popeye, a classified U.S. military program that used cloud seeding to extend monsoon seasons during the Vietnam War, crippling enemy supply routes. What was once a crude experiment in weather warfare has now evolved into a sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar industry controlled by defense contractors, intelligence agencies, and global financial institutions. While the public is told that geoengineering is a necessary tool to combat climate change, the truth is far more sinister. These technologies have been developed for full-spectrum dominance, where the ability to control the weather is just as vital as controlling information, finance, and global resources. As we dive into this chapter, we will expose the origins of military weather modification and how it evolved from wartime experiments to today's global operations. The role of HAARP Project Storm Fury and NASA's aerosol injection programs in engineering climate disasters, how wildfires, hurricanes, and droughts are artificially intensified and monetized through disaster capitalism, the financial and corporate interests that profit from geoengineered catastrophes, how governments, intelligence agencies, and media organizations work together to keep this hidden from the public, and the psychological warfare behind climate-driven fear campaigns and the push for global control through carbon credits, smart cities, and climate lockdowns. This is more than just an expose. It is a call to action. The ability to manipulate weather systems affects food security, water availability, economic stability, and personal freedoms. If governments and corporate elites can create and control climate disasters, what else can they do? How deep does this rabbit hole go? Stay tuned as we unravel the biggest environmental cover-up in history. Let's begin. The greatest trick ever pulled by those orchestrating military geoengineering is convincing the world that engineered weather disasters are natural events. Governments, intelligence agencies, and corporate-controlled media have spent decades suppressing, manipulating, and distorting the truth about weather modification programs. For the public to accept that wildfires, hurricanes, droughts, and floods are purely acts of nature, an extensive cover-up operation is required, one that spans multiple sectors, from government agencies to corporate-funded disinformation campaigns. This section will expose how geoengineering programs are hidden through classified military contracts, legislative loopholes, media censorship, and controlled opposition. It will also reveal how whistleblowers, scientists, and independent researchers have been silenced, ridiculed, or eliminated when attempting to expose the truth. One of the most effective ways military geoengineering has been kept hidden is through legal classification. Rather than openly acknowledging weather modification as a tool of warfare, population control, or economic manipulation, governments disguise these programs under terms like climate intervention research, atmospheric sciences, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injections, and weather resilience initiatives. This language ensures that critical military operations remain hidden under the guise of environmental protection. In 1976, the UN Weather Weapons Treaty was established, supposedly banning military weather modification. However, loopholes in the treaty allow domestic programs under the pretense of climate protection. The US Department of Defense has classified many geoengineering projects as national security initiatives, preventing public oversight. Freedom of Information Act requests on military weather programs are routinely denied due to alleged threats to national security. Government agencies like NASA, NOAA, and the EPA have played a crucial role in keeping the public misinformed, either by downplaying the existence of geoengineering programs or classifying them as experimental projects that are still in research phases. Intelligence agencies have been deeply involved in covering up geoengineering activities. Their tactics range from disinformation campaigns to outright censorship, ensuring that the true extent of these programs remains hidden from the public eye. The CIA, NSA, and DARPA have worked extensively to suppress, distort, and redirect public inquiry into geoengineering and weather warfare. In the 1950s, the CIA established Operation Mockingbird, a program designed to infiltrate major news organizations and control public perception. Journalists who expose geoengineering programs are marginalized, blacklisted, or discredited as conspiracy theorists. Media outlets receive funding from corporate interests who profit from geoengineering-related disasters, ensuring that real investigations never reach the mainstream. The best way to cover up geoengineering programs is to flood the public with contradictory and misleading information. Intelligence agencies do this by using paid online trolls and AI-controlled bots to attack researchers exposing weather modification. They also push fake geoengineering conspiracy theories that make the real evidence seem less credible, while releasing limited disclosures where small amounts of truth are admitted while the full extent of military geoengineering remains hidden. The intelligence community has a long history of silencing those who expose classified programs. Many whistleblowers and independent researchers who have investigated geoengineering have died under mysterious circumstances, been imprisoned on false charges, and had their careers destroyed through government harassment. Kristin Megan, a former USAF industrial hygienist, was one of the first insiders to confirm that military aircraft were receiving classified shipments of aerosol materials labeled as climate modification agents. When she went public, she was subjected to threats, career sabotage, and media blackouts. Dr. J. Marvin Herndon, a geophysicist who published scientific evidence linking coal fly ash to aerosol spraying, had his research immediately removed from scientific journals with no explanation given. Journalists like Dane Wigington and investigative researchers at Geoengineering Watch have faced ongoing censorship across YouTube, Facebook, and Google, as their content exposing weather modification is systematically deleted. The media and scientific community play a crucial role in maintaining the cover-up. Through strategic disinformation and selective reporting, they ensure the public remains unaware of the true scale and impact of geoengineering projects. The biggest threat to the geoengineering cover-up is widespread public awareness. To prevent this, big tech companies such as Google, Facebook, and YouTube work with government agencies to remove content related to geoengineering and military weather modification. They also suppress search engine results for topics related to weather manipulation. Demonetize and deplatform independent journalists exposing climate warfare. In 2019, YouTube modified its algorithm to bury geoengineering-related content, ensuring that mainstream media narratives dominate search results while investigative reports on weather modification are hidden. Most universities and climate research institutions receive government or corporate funding, preventing them from exposing military weather modification programs. Scientists who publish research on the dangers of geoengineering often lose funding, academic positions, or professional credibility. Climate change models are intentionally designed to omit data on military-induced climate manipulation. The climate crisis industry profits from keeping geoengineering secret. If people understood that most weather disasters were engineered, they would question the legitimacy of carbon tax schemes, climate lockdowns, and renewable energy agendas. The legal framework protecting geoengineering secrecy is robust and intricate. Various laws and regulations have been established to ensure that information about these programs remains hidden from the public eye. This legal shield makes it incredibly difficult for researchers and journalists to uncover the truth about weather modification activities. Governments have passed legislation that makes investigating or exposing weather modification programs nearly impossible. This US law was supposed to force government agencies to report weather modification activities, but it contains loopholes that allow military and intelligence agencies to keep these activities classified under national security exceptions. The NDELA allows military weather programs to operate without public oversight. It funds climate intervention initiatives that are classified as defense operations, protecting them from public scrutiny. Geoengineered disasters will increasingly be used to justify authoritarian climate policies, including movement restrictions, smart cities, and forced compliance with carbon taxation schemes. Legislation is being drafted to make it illegal to question climate narratives, further criminalizing dissent against geoengineering programs. Who benefits from keeping geoengineering a secret? Well, the answer is complex. Various powerful entities, including governments and multinational corporations, have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. By keeping the public in the dark, they can continue to profit from activities that might otherwise be scrutinized or halted. The entities involved in hiding the truth about military geoengineering are the same groups profiting from engineered disasters, carbon credit markets, and digital surveillance systems. The military-industrial complex benefits from classified contracts for geoengineering technology. The intelligence community maintains its power by controlling public narratives. Big tech and corporate media profit from controlling information while suppressing truth seekers. The climate crisis industry ensures carbon taxation and climate policy remain unquestioned. Globalist institutions like the WF and UN use weather warfare to justify climate restrictions. By keeping geoengineering out of public discourse, these groups ensure their control remains unchallenged. This section has demonstrated that geoengineering remains hidden through military classification, intelligence disinformation, and legislative loopholes. Whistleblowers, scientists, and journalists exposing weather modification are targeted for censorship and elimination. The corporate media, scientific community, and big tech have been co-opted to prevent widespread awareness of climate warfare. Geoengineered disasters are being used as pretexts for increased surveillance, economic control, and climate lockdown policies. Stay tuned, like, follow, and subscribe to be notified for the next chapter, because there's a lot more to come. Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires, brought to you by Publishing. In the modern era, war is no longer limited to battlefields and nuclear arsenals. The ability to manipulate weather patterns, intensify natural disasters, and create catastrophic environmental conditions has become a powerful tool of economic warfare, psychological manipulation, and population control. Weather disasters are no longer purely acts of nature. Through military geoengineering programs, governments and corporate elites have mastered the ability to weaponize the elements, creating droughts, floods, hurricanes, and wildfires to serve political and financial agendas. Keep watching. there's a lot more yet to uncover. In this segment, we'll delve into the secretive world of climate warfare. Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires, brought to you by Publishing Zombie. Like, follow and share. From the shadows, powerful entities manipulate weather patterns, creating catastrophic events that seem like acts of nature. But behind every drought, wildfire and hurricane, there's a hidden hand guiding the chaos. This hidden war impacts our daily lives, economies, and even our mental states. Stay tuned as we expose the dark science and the silent battles that shape our world. Engineered climate catastrophes serve multiple purposes. They weaken nations economically, forcing governments to accept globalist policies under the guise of climate recovery. They psychologically terrorize populations, making them more willing to surrender freedoms in exchange for climate security. They justify the expansion of global financial instruments, such as carbon credit markets of smart cities and climate taxation schemes. This section will explore the evidence behind artificially intensified weather disasters, revealing how military weather modification programs have evolved into one of the most powerful weapons of the 21st century. Weather disasters, when properly engineered and strategically deployed, can achieve economic devastation, mass displacement, and rapid societal restructuring. The true purpose of these disasters is not to kill people directly. It is to force global economic dependence, destroy national sovereignty, and implement new control mechanisms. Droughts, the silent war against food and water supplies. Droughts are one of the most effective forms of economic warfare. By artificially preventing rainfall and drying out key agricultural zones, geoengineers can create food shortages, drive up commodity prices, and force small farmers out of business, leaving the food supply in the hands of multinational agribusinesses. Jet stream manipulation and aerosolized particulate spraying have been used to block precipitation, creating drought conditions in politically and economically strategic areas. California's water shortages have coincided with the introduction of new climate policies that restrict farming and increase corporate land grabs. Third world nations experiencing prolonged droughts often become dependent on globalist institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which offer climate relief in exchange for total economic control. Wildfires, the engineered firestorms that drive land seizures and climate policy. Wildfires are no longer natural occurrences. They are being deliberately intensified using pre-fire aerosol spraying, ignition accelerating compounds, and electromagnetic weather interference. Satellite imagery has shown geoengineering aerosol trails over regions that later erupted into unprecedented firestorms. Metallic particulates found in wildfire debris, such as aluminum and barium, have been proven to accelerate combustion and increase fire temperatures. Land grabs following wildfires suggest pre-planned real estate takeovers, particularly in smart city development zones. The Maui firestorm of 2023 raised countless questions about how fire-resistant buildings and green vegetation burned to ash, while surrounding elite-owned properties remained untouched. The unnatural nature of these fire patterns suggests the involvement of directed energy weapons, or DEWs, or geoengineering-induced fire acceleration. Hurricanes and floods, the weaponization of storms. The ability to intensify hurricanes, direct their paths, and selectively flood key areas has become one of the most powerful geoengineering capabilities in modern warfare. Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Hurricane Harvey in 2017, and Hurricane Ian in 2022 showed strange intensification patterns and stalled storm systems, indicating artificial manipulation. Flooding in agricultural regions forces dependency on synthetic foods and corporate-controlled food production. Storm-driven economic devastation allows governments to expand federal disaster relief programs that benefit elite investors, rather than affected populations. Military and intelligence agencies have a long history of experimenting with hurricane modification technologies. The U.S. Navy's Project Cirrus in the 1940s, followed by Hurricane Erin's unexplained redirection on 9/11, points to the fact that hurricanes are no longer naturally occurring weather events but controlled climate weapons. For every engineered disaster, there is a powerful network of beneficiaries that stand to profit from the destruction. 1. Global investment firms and corporate land grabbers. BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street have been found purchasing devalued properties in disaster-struck regions at alarming rates. Burned-out towns and flood-prone areas are being converted into smart cities where digital surveillance, climate lockdowns and centralized control can be enforced. 2. The military-industrial complex and defense contractors. Defense companies profit from disaster response contracts, reconstruction efforts and security enforcement after climate catastrophes. Companies like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon have weather modification patents that indicate direct involvement in atmospheric engineering. 3. Globalist institutions pushing carbon taxation and climate lockdowns. The World Economic Forum and the United Nations promote geoengineering as a climate change solution, allowing for increased carbon taxation and digital currency control. Geoengineered disasters justify authoritarian climate policies that limit personal freedoms, enforce restrictions on movement and centralize control over all economic activity. Beyond the economic and geopolitical incentives, geoengineered disasters serve as psychological weapons that manipulate mass behavior. The goal is to terrorize populations, weaken their resistance, and create mass compliance through trauma-based conditioning. 1. Disaster trauma as a tool for government expansion. After major disasters, populations are more willing to accept new government policies that would have otherwise been rejected. Emergency declarations allow governments to override constitutional rights, introduce digital ID tracking, and increase surveillance powers. 2. Climate fear as a justification for increased social control. Climate-driven fear campaigns convince the public that extreme weather events are the result of CO2 emissions, rather than artificial manipulation. Environmental disasters are used to push carbon credit markets, climate taxation, and digital ID-based restrictions on consumption. 3. Creating a permanent state of emergency when populations live in constant fear of climate catastrophes. They are easier to manipulate into accepting pre-planned economic and social restructuring. Engineered disasters keep the public in a reactive state, preventing long-term resistance against globalist policies. This section has demonstrated that hurricanes, droughts, wildfires and floods are no longer random events. They are part of a carefully designed system of economic and psychological warfare. Powerful financial institutions, corporations and governments directly benefit from the destruction caused by geoengineered disasters. The trauma induced by these disasters is used to push globalist policies, digital control grids and smart city infrastructure under the guise of climate protection. Stay tuned. Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires, brought to you by Publishing Zombie. Like, share, follow, and subscribe for more. While most people assume geoengineering is a purely scientific endeavor aimed at combating climate change, the deeper reality reveals a highly profitable militarized industry backed by governments, private corporations, intelligence agencies, and globalist financial institutions. Weather control and climate modification are not just about environmental intervention. They are also about geopolitical power, financial domination, and global corporate control. A vast network of defense contractors, big tech firms, investment banks, and intelligence agencies is heavily invested in weather modification technologies. Governments fund these operations under the guise of climate research and disaster prevention, while private corporations and financial elites capitalize on engineered disasters to consolidate land, control food supply chains, and expand surveillance systems through smart cities. This section will explore the financial and corporate forces behind military geoengineering programs, detailing who profits from climate warfare and why weather control is one of the most powerful tools in the hands of global elites. Geoengineering has evolved into a multi-billion-dollar industry, with corporations and governments pouring vast sums of money into weather modification programs. While the public is told these operations are meant to protect the environment, The true beneficiaries are private entities and defense contractors that treat weather as a tool for economic and strategic control. The key players funding and profiting from geoengineering. The military-industrial complex. The Pentagon, DARPA and defense contractors receive massive government funding for classified climate modification programs. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing and Northrop Grumman hold military contracts for weather warfare technologies, including satellite-based climate control systems. These corporations profit directly from climate-engineered disasters by selling advanced weaponry, infrastructure solutions, and recovery technologies to governments worldwide. Big Tech and the AI Smart City complex. Google, Microsoft and Amazon invest heavily in weather data collection, cloud computing and AI-driven climate forecasting, which allows them to predict and manipulate economic outcomes based on weather patterns. Smart city initiatives are funded by companies like IBM, Cisco and Siemens, all of which benefit from climate-driven urban redevelopment projects that displace rural populations and force people into controlled digital zones. The banking cartel and investment firms. BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street are the largest financial entities investing in weather modification patents and disaster recovery industries. These firms own significant shares in insurance companies, real estate developers and infrastructure firms that capitalize on destruction caused by geoengineered weather events. Central banks and financial elites use climate-driven crises to justify carbon credit systems, climate taxation, and increased financial control over global economies. The UN, World Economic Forum, and globalist institutions. The UN and WEF actively promote geoengineering as part of their climate agenda, funneling billions into climate engineering projects that serve corporate and military interests. Klaus Schwab and globalist policymakers advocate for weather modification to justify new financial instruments like carbon taxation, climate lockdowns, and digital IDs. Billions of dollars in military and government spending are allocated to climate engineering projects under vague budgetary line items such as climate resilience and defense weather operations. These programs operate with little public oversight, allowing military and intelligence agencies to develop weather modification technologies without accountability. Evidence of government funding for geoengineering. The U.S. Department of Defense allocates over $20 billion annually to classified climate modification projects. According to leaked budget reports, the CIA and Pentagon have funneled funds into private contractors like SAIC and Battelle Memorial Institute, which develop aerosol dispersal technologies for military and intelligence operations. NASA and NOAA receive billions in climate research grants that are used to deploy stratospheric aerosol injections under experimental programs. Weather modification patents registered by military contractors, including ionospheric manipulation systems, aerosol delivery mechanisms, and electromagnetic climate control technologies, prove long-term investment in artificial climate alteration. Weather modification is not just a scientific experiment, it is a tool for economic warfare, financial manipulation, and corporate profit. Governments and elite institutions use climate disasters to consolidate wealth, seize land, and justify increased control over populations. Disaster. Capitalism profiting from geoengineered catastrophes. Fires, droughts, hurricanes, and extreme weather events are exploited by global investors who buy up devalued land, resources, and infrastructure in affected regions. The 2018 Paradise, California wildfires displaced thousands, allowing corporate developers to seize prime real estate for smart city construction. In Maui, 2023, evidence suggests pre-planned land grabs, as investors quickly moved to acquire burned-out properties following the firestorm. Artificial droughts and floods forced small farmers out of business, allowing multinational agribusinesses to dominate global food production. Companies like Monsanto and Bayer benefit from weather-modified drought conditions as they push genetically modified seeds designed to withstand artificial environmental stress. Bill Gates has invested heavily in synthetic food production, lab-grown meat, and climate-controlled farming technologies, reinforcing a manufactured food scarcity narrative. The same global institutions funding geoengineering also promote carbon credits, climate taxation, and digital tracking systems. BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan Chase lead the charge on carbon credit markets, using climate disasters as justification for new financial instruments that tax individuals and businesses for their so-called carbon footprint. The WEF's climate lockdown proposal suggests using extreme weather as a pretext for restricting movement, enforcing digital IDs, and limiting personal freedoms. Defense contractors, private corporations, and globalist financial institutions all have a vested interest in maintaining and expanding weather modification programs. These entities stand to gain from permanent control over climate conditions, allowing for precise manipulation of economies and resource distribution. Financial domination through carbon markets, insurance fraud, and post-disaster land acquisitions. The enforcement of digital surveillance systems tied to climate policy, smart cities, and social credit systems. Governments and elites use climate engineering not just to modify the weather but to shape the global economic and political landscape in ways that benefit their control systems while impoverishing and enslaving the masses. This section has demonstrated that weather modification is a massive industry controlled by defense contractors, intelligence agencies, and global investment firms. Governments secretly fund military geoengineering projects under classified budgetary allocations. Disaster capitalism ensures that climate-engineered catastrophes result in massive corporate and financial gains. Geoengineering programs are linked to smart cities, food control, and financial surveillance systems, reinforcing the push toward centralized global governance. Stay tuned and follow and share for more. There's a lot left, so don't go anywhere. Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires. Publishing Zombie. Throughout history, weather manipulation has been a strategic tool of warfare, surveillance, and environmental control. What was once considered science fiction is now an operational reality. Military organizations, intelligence agencies, and defense contractors have spent decades perfecting techniques to alter weather patterns, disrupt enemy supply chains, and engineer catastrophic environmental events to achieve geopolitical objectives. One of the earliest and most well-documented examples of weather warfare was Operation Popeye, a covert US military project during the Vietnam War that used cloud seeding to artificially extend the monsoon season. This operation flooded enemy supply routes, creating impassable conditions and disrupting military logistics. While Operation Popeye was eventually declassified and condemned, it set the foundation for modern atmospheric modification programs, many of which remain classified and far more advanced than what the public has been told. Today, geoengineering is no longer just about warfare, it is about control. From artificially induced droughts to engineered firestorms, the military's role in manipulating the weather is an open secret, hidden in plain sight. This section will explore the history of military weather modification, declassified programs, and the evolution of climate warfare into the modern era. The military's interest in controlling weather patterns for strategic advantage dates back over a century. The idea that rain, wind and storms could be weaponized has fascinated military planners since the early 20th century. In 1915, an early experiment by Charles Hatfield, a rainmaker in California, allegedly caused massive flooding that destroyed property and killed dozens. While the science was rudimentary at the time, this event demonstrated the potential power of atmospheric manipulation. By World War II, the concept of weaponizing weather gained momentum. British and American scientists explored techniques to enhance or suppress natural weather conditions to interfere with enemy operations. The results were limited, but the groundwork had been laid. The breakthrough came in the 1960s and 1970s, when military-funded research led to the first documented cases of large-scale weather warfare. One of the most well-known and damning admissions of military weather modification is Operation Popeye, a highly classified US Air Force project conducted during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. Operation Popeye was designed to manipulate the monsoon season in Southeast Asia using cloud seeding techniques to artificially induce heavy rainfall. The goal was to increase mudslides, disrupt enemy supply lines and flood vital transport routes such as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Aircraft deployed silver iodide and lead iodide into clouds, forcing condensation and triggering extended rainfall. The monsoon season was prolonged by an estimated 30 to 45 days each year. Flooding and landslides crippled North Vietnamese supply chains, limiting their ability to transport weapons and resources. Operation Popeye was exposed in 1974 when reports surfaced about the use of weather modification as a weapon of war. The revelation led to global condemnation and, ultimately, the 1976 UN Weather Weapons Treaty, which banned the use of environmental modification techniques for military purposes. Despite this, classified US government documents confirmed that military weather modification efforts did not stop. They simply became more covert and technologically advanced. After Operation Popeye, military research into weather modification and atmospheric warfare intensified. Instead of openly seeding clouds for rainfall, governments and defense agencies turned to more advanced geoengineering methods, including aerosol spraying, electromagnetic weather control, and ionospheric manipulation. Conducted by the US Navy and NOAA, this project aimed to alter hurricane strength and trajectory using cloud seeding. Though officially discontinued, storm fury research influenced later geoengineering experiments involving hurricanes and cyclones. A joint military project involving the US Air Force, Navy and DARPA, HAARP was designed to modify the ionosphere for communication and surveillance purposes. Independent researchers believe HAARP has been used for weather control, including the artificial intensification of storms and droughts. This declassified document openly discusses the US military's goal of achieving full-spectrum weather dominance. The report suggests that geoengineering techniques could be used to shape the battlespace by controlling storms, precipitation, and atmospheric conditions. In 2021, NASA released reports acknowledging ongoing research into aerosol-based climate engineering. The Pentagon has funded classified stratospheric aerosol injection projects, many of which are suspected of modifying global weather patterns for strategic and economic purposes. While the mainstream narrative portrays wildfires, droughts, and extreme weather as natural disasters caused by climate change, leaked military documents suggest a more deliberate and engineered approach. Wildfires have become more intense and erratic, often following aerosol spraying events. Hurricanes and typhoons appear to be artificially strengthened or steered into targeted regions. Droughts are suspiciously concentrated in politically or economically significant areas. Independent researchers found metallic particulates in wildfire debris, suggesting pre-fire aerosol spraying. Satellite imagery showed anomalous cloud patterns consistent with artificial atmospheric modification, intensified unnaturally fast, with strange, sustained cloud formations seen before landfall. Certain areas were hit harder than others, as if the storm was being steered using electromagnetic interference. Extreme freezing temperatures occurred suddenly and unpredictably, raising suspicions of engineered weather patterns. Ice formations contained unusual chemical compositions aligning with artificial weather modification theories. Military geoengineering has evolved from rudimentary cloud seeding experiments to full-scale atmospheric modification capable of shaping global climate patterns. While Operation Popeye proved that weather could be weaponized, today's geoengineering programs go far beyond simple rain manipulation. The military has actively pursued weather modification for decades. Operation Popeye set the stage for modern weather warfare. Advanced programs like HAARP, Storm Fury and aerosol-based geoengineering are still ongoing. Extreme weather events including wildfires and hurricanes are now suspected of being artificially manipulated. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe so you'll be notified when other videos are published. Stay tuned, there's much more to come. Inferno Unleashed, brought to you by Publishing Zombie. To be continued. Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Like, share and follow to stay updated. There's much more to uncover. You can also order your own copy of Inferno Unleashed, the dark science behind geoengineered wildfires, available now in Amazon bookstores.